The Anne Frank House in Amsterdam is among the most visited historic sites in all of Europe. Now a recreation of the Annex, where Anne and her family lived for 2 years, is coming to New York City. We will take you to Amsterdam for that story when the rush hour returns. Stay with us. For nearly 7 decades, the Anne Frank House in Amsterdam has served as a place of memory and a primary resource for teaching and learning about World War II and the Holocaust. For the first time in history now, Anne Frank the exhibition, a full-scale recreation of the Annex room where Anne and her parents and her sister and 4 others spent 2 years hiding to evade Nazi capture. It will be on display at the Center for Jewish History here in New York starting in January. Ronald Leopold is the executive director of the Anne Frank House in Amsterdam and joins me now from Amsterdam via Zoom. Thank you so much for coming on the Rush Hour to speak about this. And tell us about this exhibition that is opening here in New York City in January.
So we're excited to bring this presentation about Anne Frank's life to New York City in January. As you said, we are going to bring a full-scale, meticulous recreation of what is called the Annex to New York. But as part of a larger presentation of Anne's life from her early years in Frankfurt am Main, Germany, through the rise of the Nazi regime, her school years in the Netherlands when the family moved to the Netherlands, and then of course the period in hiding, and finally her death in Bergen-Belsen concentration camp. It's kind of an immersive, captivating experience with sound, video, photography. It's also an example of how we try to tell the story in new ways that resonate with younger generations.
Yeah, and I understand that when it comes here to New York, it will be different. Well, obviously, it'll open it up to many, many more people. It is one of the biggest attractions in Amsterdam, but also it'll be accessible, and the house in Amsterdam is not to people who have disabilities.
That's right, and it's, of course, many people do not have the opportunity to travel to Amsterdam, and even if they have the opportunity, it's very hard to get tickets for a house that is really one of the most visited historical sites in Europe. And so this is an opportunity for people in New York to visit the Annex and to learn about Anne Frank, and also to learn about the relevance of that story for our own times.
Yeah, and talk a little bit about the relevance of the story and why now is the time that you are bringing this exhibition to New York.
Well, with ever fewer Holocaust survivors in our communities, and with a steep increase in anti-Semitism and all kinds of group hatred and discrimination in all its forms, we feel we have a huge responsibility. It's a call to action to stand against anti-Semitism, to stand against hatred. And this has always been the mission of the Anne Frank House. It was also the mission of Anne Frank's father, who was the sole survivor of his family. And when he published the diary after the war and was very much involved in opening the house, he always saw this also as something that was not just a story about the past, but also very much a call to action for the present and the future.
I understand it was also the wish of her father that many of the artifacts not be in the rooms of the Annex in Amsterdam. And so there will be some artifacts never before seen when these rooms open and in the recreation of these rooms open in New York. Can you tell us about those?
That's right. If you visit the Anne Frank House here in Amsterdam, if you visit a museum, you will find basically an empty space, empty house. It will be different in New York. The recreation of the Annex will be furnished, will be decorated like it was when Anne was forced going into hiding. So it's a different experience, bringing the visitors really close to the history in place and time. And apart from that, we are bringing more than 100 collection items, original collection items to New York, each with its own story and contributing to the experience of visitors, bringing them literally into the time that Anne was in hiding and into those spaces. We also present a video projection that is about Amsterdam in 1941, 1942, the first war years when Anne was faced with anti-Jewish regulations across the city, and when she finally had to go into hiding in 1942.
And so many people know Anne Frank, of course, through her diaries. What is it about this exhibit and bringing these artifacts and people into close contact with this type of space that she was living in that will elevate her story and tell it in a different way?
I think for every great exhibition, you need key collection items, key artifacts, and that's what we're going to bring to New York. But we're going to combine it with innovative technology and really making this captive, immersive, interactive experience a very different way of learning about the Holocaust, the history of the Holocaust. It's not the classic kind of exhibition that you go from one showcase to another and see certain items or artifacts. This is really being immersed in a story, and in this way, hopefully touching also the hearts of visitors. That is very important to us because we know what it does to visitors to the Anne Frank house. It's a very emotional experience. Mm-hmm. And what we try to do in New York is also touching their hearts and then hopefully inspiring them to think about Anne Frank's life and what it means for them.
Certainly. So appreciate you coming on the Rush Hour and speaking with us. Ronald Leopold, Executive Director of the Anne Frank House in Amsterdam. We look forward to welcoming you to New York in January. The Anne Frank exhibition opens on Monday, January 27th, 2025. Which happens to be International Holocaust Remembrance Day, and it will mark the 80th commemoration of the liberation of Auschwitz. The exhibition is free for all city public school students. For tickets, you can go online to annefrankexhibit.org.